Dad, Nora, and I got married yesterday. It was an intimate ceremony, just the people who really mattered were there. By the way, can you send us the keys to the apartment in Dubai? We want to spend our honeymoon there. My son's call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing contracts in my Manhattan office. 3 years building my international real estate consulting firm, and this was the most surreal conversation I'd ever had. You got married yesterday? I repeated, trying to process the words. But I thought the wedding was in December. We changed our minds, Dad. Nora thought something more spontaneous would be more authentic. You understand, right? Less stress, less family drama. Less family drama. As if I were the problem. My name is Richard, I'm 52 years old, and until yesterday I believed I had a solid relationship with my only son. David has been my priority ever since his mother died in a car accident when he was 15. We formed a partnership, father and son against the world. At least that's what I thought. Sure, David. Congratulations to both of you. I kept my voice neutral, professional. When do you want to travel? Actually, we'd like to leave tomorrow. Nora has already canceled her appointments, and I've asked for a week off from the office. The apartment in Dubai. $3 million of beachfront property I bought as an investment 5 years ago. David always knew it would be his one day, part of the inheritance I built for our future. No problem. I'll send the keys by courier today. Thanks, Dad. You're amazing. After I hung up, I stood looking out the 23rd floor window, watching the tiny people on the streets of New York. 3 years. 3 years since David brought Nora home for the first time, an art gallery assistant with calculated smiles and precise compliments about my wine collection. Since then, our relationship had gradually changed. The daily phone calls became weekly, then monthly. Sunday dinners, our sacred tradition, were replaced with excuses about her family commitments or important social events. Nora thinks it would be best if we established our independence as a couple, David had explained 6 months ago when I questioned the distance. Independence. A nice word for isolation. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer. Harrison, I need you to do some discreet research on someone for me. Nora Sullivan, 28 years old, works at the Metropolitan Gallery. Because something about the rush of this marriage, the immediate request for an apartment, and the total exclusion of the ceremony bothered me deeply. And if there's one thing I've learned building a real estate empire from scratch, it's to trust my instincts. They rarely let me down. If you're enjoying this family drama and betrayal, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because what I discovered about my new daughter-in-law went far beyond my worst suspicions. As I organized the paperwork to send the keys, I had no idea that I was about to discover that my son had married a woman who had very specific plans for our family. Plans that included more than just a honeymoon in Dubai. Harrison's call came the next morning as I was having coffee on the terrace of my penthouse. His tone was different, more serious than usual. Richard, you're going to want to sit down for this. In 20 years of working together, Harrison had never started a conversation like this. I set my cup down and braced myself. Nora Sullivan doesn't exist, at least not in the form your son knows her. Her real name is Nora Castellanos, and she has a rather interesting background. My stomach clenched. Go on. 3 previous marriages, all to older, successful men. The first was to a real estate broker in Miami and lasted 8 months. She gained access to his business accounts before the divorce. The second was to a tech entrepreneur in Austin, a marriage that ended when his family discovered she was transferring money to offshore accounts. I closed my eyes, picturing David, my bright, naive son, completely blind to what was happening. And the third. James Richardson, owner of a restaurant chain in Chicago. This one was the most elaborate. She got him to change his will, naming her as the primary beneficiary. When Richardson died in a skiing accident 2 months after the wedding, she inherited everything. Accident. Investigated, but closed. No evidence of foul play. She received $3.2 million and disappeared for 6 months. She reappeared in New York as Nora Sullivan, a gallery assistant with a completely fabricated past. The coffee had completely lost its flavor. Harrison, I need everything you can get on her. Every detail, every financial transaction, every person she's met in the last 2 years. I'm on it. But Richard, there's something else. She didn't choose David by accident. She spent 3 months researching the family before orchestrating the first meeting. 3 months. While I thought David had found the love of his life in a casual coffee shop, this woman was studying our family like an investment. How did she get information about us? Social media, public property records, articles about his company. His fortune and the apartment in Dubai are easily accessible information for anyone who knows where to look. After I hung up, I stood on the terrace for an hour, watching Manhattan wake up, thinking about how David had changed in the last few months. The talk about emotional independence and prioritizing the relationship now made perfect sense. Nora wasn't just isolating my son from his family. She was following a tried-and-true manual of psychological manipulation. I remembered the last time David came over for dinner 4 months ago. He had arrived excited, telling us about a promotion at his law firm and his plans for the future. Then Nora arrived, an hour late, with excuses about traffic. "David, honey, you didn't mention that your father collected such expensive art," she had commented, looking at my paintings. "It must be worth a fortune." At the time, I thought she was just curious. Now I realized she was assessing. During dessert, she had asked subtle questions about my investments, properties, retirement plans. Questions an interested daughter-in-law would ask, but with a precision that now bothered me. "Richard, David told me you own properties in several countries. It must be fascinating to manage an international portfolio." "Dad has always been conservative with his investments," David had replied proudly. "Global diversification, premium properties. The apartment in Dubai is one of my favorites." The gleam in her eyes when Dubai was mentioned. How hadn't I noticed it before? After dinner, while David was fetching desserts from the kitchen, Nora had approached me with that calculated smile. "Richard, can I be blunt? David is very attached to you. Sometimes I worry that he won't be able to establish his own identity while he's so dependent on his father's approval." "David has always been independent," I replied, confused. "Sure, financially. But emotionally? He calls me 3 times a day, always mentioning what you would think about his decisions. For our relationship to thrive, he needs to learn to trust himself more, you know." That conversation planted the first seed of doubt about my place in David's life. And in the weeks that followed, the phone calls dwindled, dinners were cancelled, and my son gradually withdrew. Now I understood the plan. Isolate the victim from the family, create emotional dependency, marry quickly, and then gain legal access to the family assets. The apartment in Dubai was just the beginning. I picked up my phone and called my estate manager. "Jennifer, I need a complete reassessment of my assets that are jointly held with David. I want to know exactly what a wife would have legal access to." "Any specific issues, sir?" "Let's just say I'm reviewing my succession strategy." Her response came via email 2 hours later. My heart sank as I read the numbers. David had access to or future rights to approximately $15 million in property, investments, and business accounts. And now Nora, as his legal wife, had rights to half of everything David owned or would inherit. This woman hadn't chosen my son out of love. She had chosen our family as her biggest con yet. But while Nora calculated her next moves in Dubai, using my own apartment to plan how to access my fortune, she didn't know she had made a crucial mistake. She had underestimated the determination of a father who built an empire from scratch and would not allow anyone to destroy his only son's future. The real war was just beginning, and this time, she had chosen the wrong opponent. Harrison's full report arrived the following Friday, while David and Nora were in Dubai, probably planning their next move using my own apartment as their base of operations. 63 pages of evidence that painted an even more sinister picture than I had imagined. Nora wasn't just an opportunistic con artist. She was a systematic predator with a method so refined it was impressive, if not absolutely terrifying. "Richard, you need to see this," Harrison said, spreading photographs across my office desk. "We got access to her previous marriage records. The pattern is always the same." The images showed Nora at different times, different haircuts, different styles of clothing, but always the same strategy. Always alongside older men, always with calculated smiles at expensive social events. First, she studies the victim for months. She frequents the same places, creates a complete psychological profile. Then she orchestrates a seemingly casual encounter. In David's case, It was at that corporate law conference in Boston. My stomach tightened. David had told me proudly about how he met Nora by chance at the coffee break, when she spilled coffee on his tie while discussing real estate contracts with a colleague. Did she know David would be there? Not only did she know, she signed up for the same conference specifically to meet him. We have her payment record from 3 days after David confirmed his attendance online. Harrison turned the page, revealing bank statements. Here's what she does after gaining the victim's trust. Small initial transfers, always with emotional excuses. A medical emergency, an investment opportunity she couldn't pass up, temporary credit card problems. I recognized the pattern immediately. Over the past 6 months, David had casually mentioned several times how Nora needed financial help. Bureaucratic problems with her gallery account, he had explained. Complicated banking system after changing addresses. Did David give her money? $15,000 in small transfers over the last 4 months. She always paid her back quickly, building trust for larger amounts. $15,000 my son never mentioned. $15,000 that probably went into offshore accounts, part of the larger scheme. Harrison, there's something else that's disturbing. We got in touch with the family of her third husband, James Richardson. His sister agreed to talk to us. My phone rang at that moment. David, calling from Dubai. Hi Dad. How are you? The forced cheerfulness in his voice broke my heart. Hello son. How's the honeymoon? Amazing. The apartment is even more impressive than in the photos. Nora is in love with the ocean view. I'm sure she is, I thought. Probably already cataloging the resale value and figuring out how to transfer the property into her name. Dad, I actually called because Nora had a fantastic idea. She knows some investors in Dubai who are interested in premium American properties. She thought you might like to expand your portfolio here. There it was. The next phase of the plan. Using our honeymoon to connect me with investors, who were likely either accomplices or simply an excuse to get me to sign documents transferring property. Sounds interesting, David. Email me the details when you get back. Actually, they want a virtual meeting tomorrow. They're very busy people and rarely have free time. Artificial urgency. Another classic sign of a financial scam. Sure, son. Get everything set up. After I hung up, Harrison handed me a recording on his phone. This is James Richardson's sister. She gave us permission to record. The voice of a middle-aged woman filled the office, heavy with pain that had not yet healed. James changed completely after he met Nora. My brother was cautious with money, always had been. He built his business slowly, investment by investment. But she convinced him to make dramatic changes. What kind of changes? First, she suggested he diversify internationally. She opened accounts in tax havens for asset protection. Then she convinced him to change his will, saying it would show complete trust in their marriage. My mouth went dry. And the skiing accident? James didn't ski, sir. He'd been afraid of heights since he was a child. He had never set foot on a mountain in his life. But that week, Nora insisted that he needed to overcome his fears and embrace new experiences. She had organized the entire trip as a surprise. The recording continued for another 20 minutes, detailing how Nora had systematically isolated James from his family, convinced him to make risky investments, and then orchestrated the fatal trip. The investigation was closed due to lack of evidence, his sister concluded, but we all know what happened. Nora was the sole beneficiary of a $5 million life insurance policy that James signed 2 weeks before the trip. When the recording ended, the office fell silent. Harrison watched me carefully, probably expecting me to panic or demand immediate action. Instead, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The same calm I felt when closing million-dollar deals or navigating complex business crises. Harrison, I need you to do a few things discreetly. What do you have in mind? First, I want complete surveillance of David and Nora while they're in Dubai. Every move they make, every person they meet, every phone call they make. It's already in progress. Second, I want you to contact the families of the previous victims. We need to coordinate our efforts. And third, I looked out the window at Manhattan, thinking of my son thousands of miles away, believing he was living a fairy tale when in fact he was being groomed to become the next victim of a nightmare. Third, we give Nora exactly what she wants. We cooperate fully with all of her plans. Harrison frowned. Richard, are you sure? This seems extremely risky. Harrison, have you ever seen a predator being captured? On the Discovery Channel, maybe. In nature, the best way to capture a predator is to use bait he can't resist. Nora is expecting resistance, suspicion, attempts to interfere with her wedding. What she's not expecting is total cooperation. I grabbed my phone and started typing an email to David. Son, on second thought about the investors in Dubai. I'm very interested. In fact, I have a better proposal. How about you guys extend your honeymoon for another week? I'll fly out there and we can do business in person. My contribution. I sent the email and leaned back in my chair. Richard, you're going to Dubai? I'm going to give Nora the opportunity to try to screw me over in person. And while she's busy orchestrating her grand final move, I'll be collecting real-time evidence of every crime she commits. Harrison still looked worried. What if she manages to manipulate you too? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Harrison, I've spent 30 years building an international real estate empire. I've taken on Russian mobsters, Latin drug cartels, and corrupt Middle Eastern politicians. They were all professional predators too. I picked up the folder with the evidence on Nora and locked it in the safe. The difference is that they all knew they were predators. Nora has convinced herself that she's just a smart woman making practical choices. That illusion about herself is her greatest weakness. My phone beeped. David's reply was instant and enthusiastic. Dad. Amazing. Nora was thrilled by your generosity. She's already calling investors. When can you get here? I replied immediately, tomorrow night. I can't wait to get to know my new daughter-in-law better. Harrison watched me type and sighed. Richard, I hope you know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to Dubai to give Nora enough rope to hang herself. And when she tries to manipulate me, I'll record every second. As I made my travel arrangements, a single question echoed in my mind. How many other fathers had lost their children to this woman without ever having a chance to fight? But as Nora celebrated her apparent victory in luring me into her territory, she had no idea she was about to face an opponent who had built his entire career on understanding exactly how predators operate. The real hunt was just beginning, and this time, Nora was the prey. The trip to Dubai was scheduled for the next day, but my real journey began that same afternoon in Harrison's office, which had been transformed into a military operations center. Richard, I've made contact with James Richardson's sister and Emma Chen's parents. Both families want to cooperate, Harrison announced, spreading documents across the conference table. But there's something else you need to know. He slid a red folder toward me. The FBI's International Financial Crimes Investigation has been tracking Nora for 8 months. Special Agent Catherine Mills wants to talk to us. My blood ran cold. The FBI. Apparently, Nora didn't stop with the 3 marriages we discovered. There's evidence of at least 2 other cases in different states, plus an ongoing operation in Los Angeles that was cut short when the victim died unexpectedly. 5 victims. Possibly 6, if we count David. Agent Mills can meet us tonight at 7. Neutral location, maximum discretion. Richard, they want to use your trip to Dubai as a controlled operation. 2 hours later, I was sitting in an inconspicuous cafe on the Upper East Side, watching a woman in her 40s approach our table. Agent Catherine Mills had the kind of presence that went unnoticed in crowds, but her eyes revealed a sharp intelligence that didn't miss a detail. Mr. Thompson, thank you for agreeing to cooperate, she said, sitting down and placing a small tape recorder on the table. Nora Castellanos has been on our priority target list for almost a year. Tell me about the other cases. Michael Chun, Portland construction executive. 4 months married, died of a heart attack while exercising, which Nora insisted he start. Inherited $2.7 million. Robert Walsh, restaurant franchise owner. 6 months married, car accident on a road Nora suggested as the fastest route. $3.1 million. My jaw tightened. And the Los Angeles case. Dr. Stephen Park, plastic surgeon. Nora had been with him for a year, already living in his house, when he suffered an accidental overdose of medications he prescribed for himself. Nora called the ambulance, but the paramedics arrived too late. Accidental. The investigation was inconclusive. But Dr. Park had changed his will 3 weeks earlier, naming Nora as the primary beneficiary of a $6 million life insurance policy. Catherine handed me a tablet with surveillance photos. Nora at different times, always with older men, always wearing expensive clothes, always smiling. The pattern is always the same, Mr. Thompson. She studies the victim, creates emotional dependency, isolates them from their family, marries quickly, and then orchestrates risky situations that can be interpreted as accidents. And David. Your son is in real danger. The apartment in Dubai is perfect for what she does. Isolated, no witnesses, in international territory where investigations are more complicated. I felt my stomach sink. You think she'll try something during the honeymoon? Not during. After. When you return, after she has established legal access to your assets through her marriage to David. A convenient domestic tragedy eliminates the son and leaves a young widow with inheritance rights. The room fell silent. Catherine continued, her professional voice masking the gravity of what she was saying. That's why we need your help, Mr. Thompson. Your trip to Dubai is our chance to document Nora in action, to collect irrefutable evidence of conspiracy and fraud. But it's extremely dangerous. What do you want me to do? Cooperate fully with all of her plans. Let her believe she's getting the better of you. We'll have agents in Dubai, surveillance equipment, and you'll be in constant contact with us. Catherine slid a small device across the table. State-of-the-art transmitter. It looks like a shirt button, but it records everything within 20 meters and transmits it in real time to our base. And David? Does he need to know? Absolutely not. David believes he's in love. If he learns the truth, he could inadvertently alert Nora. Your performance must be flawless. We spent the next 3 hours working out every detail. I would feign interest in the fictitious investors, show willingness to transfer property, and even discuss changes to my will if Nora suggested it. Remember, Catherine emphasized, Nora is extremely intelligent. She reads people like you read contracts. Any hesitation, any behavior out of the ordinary, and she could call the whole thing off and disappear. Like she did with Dr. Park. Exactly. At the first sign that she was being investigated, she vanished. That's why this operation is our only chance. As I walked back to the house, my phone rang. David, again from Dubai. Dad. Nora is so excited about your visit. She's organized a special dinner for tomorrow night with the investors. She said you'll be impressed with the opportunities here. I can't wait to meet them, son. And Dad, thanks for being so understanding about the wedding. I know it wasn't ideal not to invite you, but Nora was right about starting our own tradition. Every word was like a stab in the heart. My son was thanking me for accepting to be excluded from the most important ceremony of his life. David, are you happy? I've never been happier, Dad. Nora completes me in a way I never thought possible. After I hung up, I stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, watching the Manhattan traffic. Normal people going home after a normal day at work, unaware that just a few blocks away, a father was preparing for a mission that could save his son's life. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and began reviewing all the documents Harrison had compiled. 5 deaths, $15 million stolen, at least a dozen families destroyed. And now she had David. I called my private banker and instructed my wealth manager to prepare documents showing my international properties and investments. If Nora wanted to see my wealth, I would give her exactly what she expected. Then I called my pilot. Marcus, I need you to prepare the jet for Dubai tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. And Marcus, this time, install every security camera available. I'm going to have important meetings that need to be documented. The irony didn't escape me. I was using my own wealth as bait to capture the woman who wanted to destroy my family. If you're following this story of manipulation and danger, subscribe to the channel because what happened in Dubai exceeded even the FBI's darkest expectations. At 2 in the morning, I was still awake, reviewing every aspect of the plan. Nora had spent months studying our family, but now I had 48 hours to study her. The difference was that she studied to destroy, while I was studying to preserve. When the sun rose over Manhattan, I was ready for the performance of my life. A performance that would determine whether my son would return home as a traumatized widower or as a free man who discovered the truth in time. But while I was making final preparations for Dubai, Nora was on the other side of the world, finalizing her own plans for what she believed would be the final coup of her career. What none of us knew yet was that this international chess match was about to take a turn that even the FBI hadn't anticipated. Dubai welcomed me with its familiar warmth and gleaming skyscrapers, but this time the city felt different. Every reflection in the mirrored windows reminded me of the cameras watching me. Every shadow hid federal agents ready to spring into action. David was waiting for me at the airport with a genuine smile that broke my heart. My son was completely oblivious to the danger, hugging me as if we were a normal family reunited to celebrate. "Dad, you can't imagine how excited Nora is to show you the investment opportunities." In the car, as David drove through the futuristic city, Nora turned from the front seat with that smile I now recognized as calculated. "Richard, I've arranged a special dinner tonight. 3 very influential investors want to meet you in person." "I can't wait," I replied, discreetly adjusting the button on my shirt that transmitted every word to Catherine Mills. The apartment in Dubai was exactly as I remembered it, but now it looked like a military operations center. Nora had turned my living room into a makeshift office, with laptops, documents, and presentations scattered across the mahogany table. "Your apartment is even more impressive than David described," she said, walking over to the panoramic windows. "The real estate appreciation here must be extraordinary." During lunch, Nora began her performance. With David present, she kept the tone casual, but her eyes studied my every reaction with surgical precision. "Richard, David told me about your international diversification strategy. Very smart to protect assets in different jurisdictions." "I learned early on that flexibility is key in business," I replied, letting her lead the conversation. "Exactly. And with the U.S. tax changes, many investors are moving assets to tax havens. Are you familiar with the Cayman Islands?" There it was. The first hook. In the afternoon, while David napped after the long flight, Nora revealed her true colors. We sat on the private terrace, Dubai glistening below us, and she began her final assault. "Richard, can I be blunt? David is very conservative when it comes to investments. He doesn't understand opportunities that require quick decisions." "What do you mean?" "The investors we met tonight represent a private equity fund that is closing in 48 hours. They want to propose a partnership, but they need significant guarantees." She handed me a tablet showing seemingly professional documents. "If you temporarily transfer ownership of the apartment as collateral, they'll offer you a 15% return in 6 months. Then you get the property back, plus the profits." 15% in 6 months. The classic fictitious investment scam. Sounds risky, Nora. That's why I suggested not involving David initially. He'd worry unnecessarily. We can present it as a fait accompli when the profits arrive. Don't involve David. Isolate the victim from his family. Exactly the pattern Catherine had described. What if something goes wrong? Nora leaned forward, touching my arm with false intimacy. "Richard, can I confess something? David mentioned that you have a mild heart condition. High-stress investments can be dangerous for men your age." Heart problems that didn't exist. She was planting seeds for a future medical accident. "Actually, I have an exceptional cardiologist here in Dubai. Dr. Hassan works with American executives frequently. Perhaps you should get a checkup while you're here." Dr. Hassan. Probably the same kind of specialist who had treated her previous victims. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the supposed investors arrived. 3 middle-aged men, expensive suits, vaguely European accents. We sat in the formal dining room, fine china reflecting the city lights. "Mr. Thompson, your reputation in the international real estate market is impressive," said the leader, who introduced himself as Victor. For 2 hours, they painted fantastic scenarios of guaranteed profits, exclusive opportunities, limited time windows. Every sentence was a classic element of investment fraud. "Naturally, we need documentation of ownership to begin the process," Victor concluded, sliding contracts across the table. "Of course," I replied, picking up my pen. "But first, I need to make a quick call to my lawyer in New York." Nora became visibly tense. "Richard, it's almost 3 in the morning there." Harrison works late. It's a matter of protocol. I dialed the number Catherine had given me. It wasn't Harrison, but a federal agent pretending to be my lawyer. Harrison? It's me, Richard. I'm in Dubai reviewing an investment opportunity. As I spoke, I watched Nora whisper urgently to Victor. They clearly hadn't expected legal checks. I see, Harrison. Yes, you're right about checking backgrounds first. I hung up and smiled at the table. My lawyer wants to do a quick background check on you guys. Standard protocol for investments over $5 million. Victor turned pale. Mr. Thompson, our fund values discretion. Of course. But Harrison insists. He can get results in a few hours. Nora stood up abruptly. Maybe we should postpone until tomorrow. Give everyone time to process the information. Excellent idea, I agreed. After the hasty departure of the investors, Nora was visibly shaken. David, confused by the sudden tension, left early. At 11 o'clock at night, only Nora and I remained on the terrace. The lights of Dubai twinkled like artificial stars, and the warm air carried the scent of jasmine from the hanging gardens. Richard, she said, her voice losing all pretense of sweetness, we need to talk. At that moment, Catherine Mills emerged from the shadows, accompanied by 4 federal agents and 2 Dubai police officers. Nora Castellanos, Catherine announced, you are under arrest for conspiracy, international fraud, and murder. Nora's face changed completely. The mask of charm disappeared, revealing something cold and calculating that made me understand how she had destroyed so many lives. This is a mistake, she said, but her voice betrayed her growing panic. Catherine smiled, holding a tablet showing 3 hours of recordings. There's no mistake, Nora. We have you on video trying to defraud a U.S. citizen, suggesting illegal property transfers, and discussing plans to put the victim in medical danger. David appeared on the balcony, awakened by the noise, looking from the agents to his wife in total shock. Dad, what's going on? It was then that Catherine explained everything. The 5 previous deaths, the systematic pattern, the real danger David was facing. As Nora was handcuffed, she looked at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've just destroyed, she hissed. I know exactly what I destroyed, I replied calmly. A nightmare that was about to consume my son. But as the agents led Nora away, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. David would have to face the truth about the woman he loved, and I would have to help him rebuild his life from the wreckage of this devastating betrayal. Nora Castellanos' trial began 6 months later in New York and lasted 3 intense weeks that revealed the full extent of her criminal operation. Catherine Mills had built a flawless case. The Dubai recordings, combined with evidence from the 5 previous murders, painted a picture of a systematic predator who had perfected her technique over a decade. David testified as a surviving victim, his voice steady but heavy with pain as he described how Nora had manipulated his emotions and isolated him from his family. She studied every vulnerability I had, he told the jury, looking directly at Nora. She used my history with my father, my fears about relationships, even my professional ambitions against me. The families of the previous victims were present. James Richardson's sister cried when the prosecutor presented evidence showing how Nora had orchestrated the fatal skiing accident. But the most shocking moment came when Catherine revealed additional findings from the international investigation. Nora Castellanos operated in a network with other con artists, she explained to the court. We have evidence of at least 12 additional victims in 4 different countries. 12 victims. Entire families destroyed by a manipulative machine that turned love into profit. During her closing statement, Nora attempted one last manipulation, claiming she was a victim of circumstance and that she truly loved each of her husbands. The jury was not convinced. After only 3 hours of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts. Nora was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the sentence was read, she maintained the same cold expression I had seen on the terrace in Dubai, but her eyes betrayed an impotent rage that confirmed everything we had always known about her true nature. After the trial, David and I walked silently through the streets of Manhattan. 3 whole blocks without speaking, processing the end of a nightmare that had nearly destroyed our family. Dad, he finally said, stopping in a small square, how did you know? Paternal instinct, I replied. And experience in business. I've learned to recognize when someone is selling something too good to be true. David laughed, but it was a sad laugh. I really loved her, you know? Or at least, I loved who I thought she was. You loved a carefully constructed illusion. That doesn't make your feelings any less real. The healing process was long and complex. David began therapy specializing in psychological manipulation, discovering that Nora had used professional mind control techniques documented in manuals used by cults and brainwashing organizations. It's not your fault, Dr. Martinez, the therapist, explained during a family session. People like Nora study human vulnerabilities, like surgeons study anatomy. They know exactly where and how to cut to cause maximum damage. 6 months after the trial, David made a decision that surprised me. He wanted to turn his experience into something positive. Dad, I want to create something that will prevent other families from going through what we went through. The apartment in Dubai became a symbol of renewal for us. David suggested we turn it into a memorial for Nora's victims, but the idea evolved into something much bigger. Together with the other affected families, we created the Richardson Walsh Foundation, offering educational resources about emotional predators and support for victims of manipulation. Emma Chun, the second victim to survive Nora's scam, became our executive director. Richard saved David, she told me during the inauguration, but in doing so, how many other families did he save that we don't even know about? The foundation has grown beyond our wildest dreams. In 2 years, we've established programs in 15 states, trained over 200 specialized counselors, and directly helped over 1,000 victims of emotional manipulation. David has gradually regained his confidence, but with a new wisdom. He started giving talks about the signs of toxic relationships, turning his traumatic experience into a tool to protect others. The difference between being a victim and a survivor, he said at a recent conference for more than 500 people, is what you do with the knowledge you gain through pain. During these years, we have witnessed incredible transformations. Women who came to us emotionally shattered, convinced they were crazy or paranoid, discovered that their experiences followed documented patterns of psychological abuse. Sarah Walsh, another of Nora's survivors, became a lawyer specializing in financial crimes. Before her, I was just a successful businesswoman, Sarah told me. After, I became a warrior. 2 years after the trial, David met Jennifer, a trauma psychologist who understood his history completely. When he introduced me to her, my first question was about his parents. I'd love to meet them, I said. And this time, I hope I'll be at the wedding. David smiled, that genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. Dad, you're going to be my best man. The wedding took place in the Dubai apartment, now transformed from a place of near tragedy to a place of celebration. 30 guests, including survivors of Nora's network and their families, celebrated not only David and Jennifer's love, but also the victory of light over darkness. During the ceremony, I looked at my son repeating vows of true love and thought about how we almost lost everything. Catherine Mill's international investigation resulted in the arrest of 8 other scammers from Nora's network. Families recovered millions in stolen assets, and changes in international law made it more difficult for predators to operate across borders. Last week, I received a thank you letter from the family of James Richardson. You have restored dignity to our brother's memory, they wrote. We finally know that he did not die because of his own recklessness, but was the victim of a calculated crime. Those words carry special weight because they represent something greater than personal revenge. They represent restorative justice, the kind of healing that only happens when truth finally prevails over lies. The last time I heard from Nora, she was serving a life sentence in a maximum security federal prison, where her manipulative skills are useless against trained guards and inflexible routines. Other prisoners, especially those with families of their own, don't look kindly on women who destroy homes. David now works part-time at the foundation, using his legal experience to help other victims navigate complex legal systems. We have dinner every Sunday, a tradition Nora had tried to destroy but which has become even more precious. Dad, he said to me last Sunday, carving the roast beef I learned to make after his mother died, thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on us. That's what fathers do, I replied. We protect our children from predators, even when they can't see the danger. Jennifer, now an official member of the family, added, Richard, you didn't just save David. You created a model of how paternal love can overcome professional manipulation. If this story of family protection and justice has touched you, Subscribe to the channel for more stories about how true love always finds a way to overcome manipulation and how it's never too late to fight for those you love. Today, as I write this story, I'm sitting in the Foundation's office, watching David lead a support group for men who have been victims of emotional predators. Seeing my son turn his pain into purpose is the sweetest revenge I could ever imagine. The real lesson from this experience isn't about revenge, but about perseverance. About never accepting that the people we love are lost forever. It's about trusting our instincts when something seems too wrong to be true. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy, but building something even stronger and more meaningful from the wreckage they left behind. Our family not only survived Nora Castellanos' attack, but emerged more united, wiser, and dedicated to protecting other families from suffering the same fate. The last time I spoke to Catherine Mills, she told me something I will never forget. Richard, you turned a criminal investigation into a social justice movement. That's rare. As for me, I am planning my retirement, knowing that I leave David not only a financial empire, but also the knowledge that true love always defeats calculated manipulation, and that a united family is the most powerful force against any predator. And when David and Jennifer give me grandchildren, they will grow up knowing that their grandfather once stood up to one of the most dangerous manipulators in the world and won, not with violence or cruel revenge, but with patience, strategy, and unwavering paternal love.